Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere hot. Really hot. Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a sun-bleached plain, the desert wind brushing your skin like a hairdryer on medium. Your sandals crunch over hard-packed earth, and every step kicks up a little cloud of dust that clings to your ankles. Around you rise clusters of beige homes, some with strange vertical chimneys poking into the blue sky. The sun is relentless, the air dry enough to make your lips crack, and your shirt, well, let's just say you'd do anything for a breeze. This isn't just any place. This is the Persian Plateau, and it's about to become your new bedtime haunt. Here's a fun spoiler. You probably wouldn't survive this without some clever engineering. And lucky for you, the ancient Persians had just the thing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with where you're watching from and what time it is. I always love seeing our sleepy little global community. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice, besides the heat trying to melt your eyelids, is that these buildings aren't randomly scattered. They feel thoughtful. Low to the ground, thick walls, narrow lanes between them. The alleys twist in ways that might drive a modern city planner into a quiet panic. But here, it makes sense. The buildings huddle together like a flock of camels avoiding the midday sun, creating generous shade and funneling wind in strange but soothing ways. You wander past an old well, its pulley creaking slightly in the breeze, and spot your destination, an old mud brick house with a strange chimney sticking up from the roof. At first glance, it could be mistaken for a periscope or maybe a minimalist diving board. But no, this is no submarine. This is a wind tower, or as the locals call it, a badger. You duck through a short doorway, and just like that, the temperature drops. A little. It's not Antarctic, but it's not oven hot anymore either. And inside, the air feels like it's moving. Not wildly, just enough to rustle the edge of a cotton curtain. It's subtle, like someone somewhere cracked a window for you out of pure kindness. The air smells of baked earth, slightly sweet with the memory of last night's tea. You settle on a thick cushion near the wall and listen. No machines, no hums, just the occasional whisper of a breeze brushing down from above. The Persian Plateau, stretching across much of what is now Iran, is not an easy place to call home. Summers regularly flirt with 40 degrees Celsius, that's 140 degrees for those still counting in Fahrenheit, and rainfall is less a seasonal event and more of a polite rumor. But despite this, civilizations have flourished here for thousands of years, thanks in part to inventions exactly like this one. Historians still argue whether the badger originated here or was borrowed and improved upon from other ancient civilizations like the Egyptians or Mesopotamians. The truth, as usual, is somewhere between a dusty document and a half-erased drawing on an old clay tablet. What we do know is that by the time of the Achaemenid Empire, around 500 BCE, Persians had fully committed to the art of coaxing wind into their homes. And it was an art, one you're about to fall asleep to. Outside, the sun begins its lazy descent behind dusty hills. Shadows lengthen. The alleyways grow cooler, their narrowness no longer claustrophobic but comforting, like being wrapped in layers of shade. You step outside and climb a short ladder to the roof. From here, the wind towers of the neighborhood stand like silent guardians. Some are square, others octagonal, a few even sporting decorative flourishes along their edges. You can imagine a builder centuries ago, standing barefoot on this very rooftop, checking the tower's alignment like a sailor adjusting sails. And alignment was no small matter. Wind towers weren't just built randomly. They were tuned, angled to face prevailing breezes, tall enough to catch movement, wide enough to carry it down into the rooms below. They're a bit like passive-aggressive air conditioners. No buttons, no buzzing, just whispering air, guided by geometry and patience. Nearby, you see a child chasing a fabric ball across the roof. Her mother calls softly from below, the echo bouncing between walls. The smell of stewed lentils and mint drifts up, mixing with the dry air and something else, maybe crushed rose petals drying in the sun. And still, the tower breathes. It's not just a chimney, it's a conductor of calm. You start to feel drowsy, not just from the heat, but from the rhythm of this place. Life here follows the sun, bends around the hottest hours, and always leans toward the breeze. Wind isn't a nuisance, it's a blessing. Tonight, as we begin this long, slow journey through ancient engineering, culture, and the soft rustle of desert wind, just remember, you've already found the coolest seat in the house. And tomorrow, you'll learn exactly how this tower over your head works its lazy magic. But for now, just rest. Let your eyelids grow heavy under the still, bright sky. You wake from a brief rooftop doze with a start, half convinced the tower beside you just sighed. No, that was the breeze, doing its quiet, unpaid internship as nature's air conditioner. You rub your eyes, stretch, and decide it's time to stare this thing down properly. What exactly is a wind tower, anyway? You edge closer, the mud brick underfoot pleasantly warm, like a cat that's been napping in a sunbeam. Up close, the tower is surprisingly elegant. 4 tall walls rising maybe 10 meters, each pierced at the top by tall, slender openings. Wooden slats, weathered but stubborn, cross the mouths of those apertures, angled to herd incoming wind downward. Think of them as the ancient equivalent of those plastic direction fins you twist on a modern fan, except these were installed with nothing but muscle, mud, and a maybe-it'll-work attitude. Peer into an opening, and you'll spot vertical shafts plunging to the rooms below. One shaft per face if the builder was feeling generous, or a single central column if budgets or bricks ran tight. The design is deceptively simple. Catch wind, channel it, drop it. Gravity and pressure differences do the rest while you recline on cushions, pretending you invented the concept. Mainstream fact alert: archaeologists date some standing towers in Yazd to the 14th century CE, though written references hint they were common centuries earlier. You run your fingers over the wall. The surface is a patchwork of sun-baked adobe and straw, every groove telling a story of repairs after sandstorms, weddings, and that one neighborhood goat who mistook the tower for a scratching post. The material matters. Adobe breathes. As the tower funnels air, its cool interior walls absorb stray heat, adding another degree of relief. One quirky tidbit: some builders mixed goat hair into the mud for extra tensile strength. Yes, even in ancient Iran, folks couldn't resist making everything a little hairier. You press your ear to the shaft and hear the faintest whoosh, a desert lullaby in mono. When wind speeds up outside, negative pressure forms on the tower's leeward side, tugging hot indoor air upward like a giant invisible straw. Historians still argue whether Persians discovered this Venturi effect science consciously or simply noticed, hey, holes wind equal comfy. Either way, the result feels practically magical, and magically practical. Leaning back, you imagine daily life below. In the reception hall, older relatives lounge on carpet-covered platforms, sipping pomegranate sherbet and debating poetry. A toddler toddles, as toddlers do, beneath the shaft's draft, giggling each time her curls flutter. Over in the kitchen, clay jars of water cool an extra few degrees, enough to keep yesterday's grape leaves from fermenting into surprise wine. A resident waves up at you, inviting you inside for a demonstration. Never one to refuse hospitality or snacks, you trot down a narrow stairway, marveling at how the wall's thickness muffles every outside sound. You step into the main room and, instant coolness kisses your cheeks. It's at least 5 degrees lower than the courtyard, proof you don't need Freon when you have physics and centuries of trial and error craftsmanship. The homeowner points to a small wooden door set into the floor. He unlatches it, revealing a vertical channel that connects to a Kenat water tunnel 2 stories below. The wind rushing down brushes that subterranean moisture, scooping up evaporative chill before swirling into the room. You grin. It's a prototype swamp cooler without the swamp. Joke number 1. AC, 0% electricity, 100% smug eco-bragging rights. Your host laughs politely. He's heard that one from every time-traveling tourist. You flop onto a low divan, gaze upward, and notice tiny fabric streamers hanging from a beam directly under the shaft. They flutter lazily, acting as built-in wind gauges and childhood entertainment. Legend says kids competed to see whose streamer danced longest. The winner earned the first bite of sweet melon at dinner. Joke number 2. Ancient Persia, where even HVAC came with party games. A jug of rosewater is passed around. You take a sip. It's cool enough to raise goosebumps. Quirky observation number 2. Some households dangled blocks of saffron-infused ice, harvested from winter ice houses, in the airflow so the tower doubled as a primitive scent diffuser, because why merely survive heat when you can smell fantastic doing it? As you recline, you puzzle over design variations. Some towers in coastal bush air are cylindrical, optimized for humid breezes. Others in dry Yazd boast square cross-sections for easier masonry. Historians still debate whether these shapes evolved from local aesthetics or pure aerodynamics, probably a bit of both, like choosing between round or square pizza because science says delicious. Joke 3 slides in. Architects call it form follows function. Grandmas call it whatever keeps the tea from boiling itself. The homeowner dims an oil lamp and shadows ripple across patterned brickwork. You hear distant evening prayers floating through the shaft, sound traveling the same route as wind, only gentler. Time slows. The tower is now less an appliance, more a meditative companion exhaling calm. Your breathing syncs with that steady draft, in-out, a natural metronome coaxing your heart toward rest. And just as your eyelids begin to sag, a memory surfaces. That rooftop goat. You almost expect to hear hoof scrapes overhead. Instead, a dove coos, nesting in a crevice just below the tower's crown, free pest control with wings. Sustainable living, one feather at a time. You let the room's quiet confidence wash over you. There's no roaring compressor, no glowing thermostat, no anxious electric bill. Just earth, air, water, and a structure that knows how to introduce them politely. You're starting to suspect the Persians weren't cooling houses. They were cooling people, body and spirit alike. Before you fully drift, file away the essentials. A wind tower is a vertical channel catching breezes, guiding them through angled slats, down a shaft, often across water, and into living spaces. It breathes without breathing hard. Simple? Yes. Easy to replicate? Only if you've got the right climate, the right craftsmanship, and, honestly, the right attitude toward goats. The homeowner offers a final smile, then leads you back up to the roof. Night has settled. Stars spill across the sky like spilled rice. The tower hums softly, content, purposeful. You rest against its warm base, ready for the next leg of our sleepy exploration, where we'll dig deeper into the clever geometry behind every puff of soothing air. You shift your weight on the rooftop as a small breeze tickles your ankles, threading through your sleeves like a whisper. It's subtle, but the direction is different now, east to west. And just like that, you notice something clever. The wind tower isn't built at random. Its openings aren't symmetrical decoration. They're an act of strategic geometry. You wander back toward the edge of the shaft and squint upward. From here, the tower's shape suddenly makes a new kind of sense. The longer sides of the slats face the prevailing winds, like open arms welcoming whatever relief the desert sky decides to toss your way. Depending on the region, coastal plains, inland plateaus, mountain skirts, the towers rotate slightly to match the quirks of local airflow. Mainstream historical fact: Persian architects designed these structures with prevailing wind patterns in mind, recording them orally or via diagrams passed down in trade guilds. As you step back, a thought flutters in. This is architecture that listens. It doesn't impose itself on the wind. It waits, attentive, patient. Some towers even feature rotating caps or directional vanes, adjusted seasonally or during special weather events. It's less command the elements, more ask nicely. You descend again, this time into the sleeping quarters. The walls narrow here, not out of stinginess but wisdom. Smaller spaces cool faster. Niche windows glow faintly, lined with colored glass, green, blue, and amber, casting sleepy pools across the stone floor. The air feels fresher than outside, even after a whole day of blazing sun. And that's when your host points to another hidden trick. Behind the main shaft is a smaller secondary one, a passive exhaust tunnel. Turns out these towers aren't always about bringing wind in. Sometimes they work in reverse. When there's no breeze to catch, the hot indoor air rises and exits through the shaft, pulling in cooler ground air behind it. Joke number 1. Reverse psychology, but for airflow. You notice how carefully the home is laid out. The main hallway aligns precisely with the wind shaft. Storage rooms, where it's okay to be warmer, tuck into back corners. The kitchen, despite its steamy ambitions, is placed under a separate mini-tower, keeping smells from clinging like gossipy relatives. The geometry of air has spoken. Your host traces lines in the dust with a finger, sketching a simplified floor plan. It's almost mathematical. Cross-ventilation corridors, staggered doors, shaded courtyards. Historians still argue whether these designs were inherited from Mesopotamian prototypes or developed independently by Persian builders adapting to their harsh climate. The truth? Probably both. As with so many things, ideas tend to migrate, carried by traders, travelers, and ambitious architects who didn't want to die of heat stroke. You pause by a corner alcove with a gently bubbling basin. This is a salsabil, essentially a decorative fountain that doubles as a thermal tool. Water trickles down a carved stone panel, breaking into droplets. Those droplets evaporate, cooling the air even more. It's beautiful, functional, and slightly hypnotic. Quirky fact: in some homes, they place silver coins at the bottom of the basin to catch light and shimmer across the room. Practical bling, you might say. As you lounge near the salsabil, you remember your own home's AC unit, the noisy one that kicks on every hour like a grumpy robot. This place, by contrast, hums with soft logic. Every angle matters. Even the ceiling isn't flat. It's gently domed to encourage airflow curves. The corners are rounded too, preventing eddies and stagnant air pockets. Joke number 2, Persian homes, where even corners know not to loiter. A cat pads through the room, tail high, clearly approving of the temperature. You follow it back outside to examine the tower again, this time with an eye for shape. You hadn't noticed it before, but this one's slightly tapered, wider at the base than the top. It's a Venturi-style throat, yes, like a carburetor, designed to accelerate wind speed as it descends. That means stronger breeze, faster cooling. Historians still debate whether this was deliberate aerodynamic knowledge or happy accident. Some towers even included clay jugs suspended partway down the shaft, filled with water and pierced with holes. They'd leak slowly, adding to the cooling via evaporation. In some villages, they called these weeping jars. Quirky name, soothing effect. Suddenly, your host claps once and leads you to the courtyard. It's enclosed on all 4 sides, high walls painted a soft ochre. At the center, a shallow pool mirrors the stars, and several trees, fig, pomegranate, perhaps even a dusty apricot, lean toward the water like old poets sharing secrets. Every surface in this space was chosen for a thermal reason. The stone underfoot stores the chill from night and slowly releases it through the day. The vines creeping up the eastern wall shade it just when the morning sun hits. You find yourself marveling not just at the tower, but the entire home as an interlocking system. Geometry, yes, but also choreography. A 1,000-year-old dance between brick, air, water, and time. And somehow the choreography includes you too. You're no longer an observer, you're a participant, moving from cool shadow to tempered breeze in a rhythm as old as language. You lean back against a clay bench, letting the wind tower's breath lull you. Joke number 3. Technically, the house is breathing. So if you hear snoring, that might not be you. Above, the wind tower looms like a sentinel, elegantly silent. You see how it rises just above the roofline, not ostentatiously, but like a person who knows what they're doing and doesn't need to shout about it. You're now ready to explore just how far this idea traveled, how wind towers weren't just a Persian invention, but a cultural export. But first, you linger a moment more, letting geometry do its quiet work on your skin and mind. The wind tower above you stands tall, unbothered by time or trend, and as you tilt your head back to admire it again, a new question floats gently into your drowsy brain. If this worked so well here, how far did the idea spread? Turns out, wind towers were not a well-kept secret. You begin to walk, slowly now, through the narrow alleys of a desert town that could be Yazd, or Bam, or some long-vanished sister city with the same sun-scorched wisdom. Each rooftop features its own variation of the tower design, some squat and square, others long and elegant like upturned ship hulls. Some boast 4 faces, others just one, angled purposefully like a compass needle toward prevailing wind. It's as if the whole city decided together, yeah, we'll take our chances with clay and wind instead of copper wires and grumpy repairmen. You pause at a rooftop ledge where another wind tower juts into view, this one painted with faded teal stripes. From this perch, the landscape ripples outward. Beige domes, arched doorways, and more towers, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all of them whispering with the breeze. Wind towers, or badgers, were first perfected in ancient Persia. Mainstream history places their early usage around 400 BCE, maybe earlier. But like all great ideas, they didn't stay put. From Persia, the concept drifted east toward the dry cities of India and westward into the Islamic world. Cairo has a few. Basra, too. Even medieval Spain flirted with similar ideas during the time of Al-Andalus. Historians still argue whether the designs in North Africa came directly from Persian influence or if they arose independently, shaped by similar climates and a shared human desire not to melt by noon. Either way, by the 9th or 10th century, wind towers, or something like them, had appeared in several major cities along the Silk Road. Merchants carried more than silk and spice, after all. They carried blueprints of survival, and some of those merchants clearly had opinions about airflow. As you wander further into the old city, you come across a structure not quite like the others. This one's connected to a domed cistern, the kind of building that hides water beneath earth and brick like a treasure hoarded for dry days. But above the dome, a wind tower, slim and oddly elegant, with wooden vanes like the ribs of a paper fan. It's designed to direct wind not just into rooms, but across water. A passive cooling system that turns dry air damp just enough to nudge the temperature downward. This technique, cooling through contact with water, isn't unique to Persia either. The Romans had their hypocausts, the Indians their stepwells, but Persia's pairing of wind and water is uniquely poetic. Joke number 1. Somewhere a modern HVAC engineer just fainted into a pile of ductwork. You circle the dome and notice a stairwell leading down into the cistern. The temperature drops almost immediately, maybe 10 degrees cooler, maybe more. The walls here sweat slightly, releasing the slow breath of old stone. Overhead, the tower filters in a soft draft, just enough to disturb the surface of the water and scatter the reflection of your face like a dream fading at sunrise. Quirky fact, in some cities, cisterns with wind towers were considered public luxuries. Entire neighborhoods shared access to one, and water collectors, often kids, would climb the steps with clay pots at dawn to fetch the coldest batch of the day. Some even say the best-tasting water came from the towers, with pigeons nesting near the vents. Historians still debate whether that's charming folklore or just the desert version of bottled spring water marketing. Back in the daylight, you come across a newer structure. Relatively speaking, it's only a few centuries old. This one's in a merchant house with imported tile from Turkey and wooden lattice screens from India. And above it all, 2 wind towers, this time with curved ceramic channels at their mouths. You recognize them instantly. This is hybrid design, Persian principles tweaked by Ottoman flourish. The towers catch the wind, yes, but they also shape it, using ceramic resonators to hum gently like tuned instruments. No joke, literally tuned. Some reports suggest wind towers made subtle tones when air passed through them just right. Entire homes may have had a soundtrack, barely audible but deeply calming. Imagine your house singing to you as it cools down. You lean against a low parapet and take a long breath. There's something humbling about the spread of this idea. No trademarks, no patents. Just good sense shared across generations and borders. A quiet testament to how humans collaborate without even trying sometimes. Further west, the wind tower gets new names. In Arabic-speaking regions, it's called malkaf. In North Africa, the design shifts, sometimes using fabric sails or wooden scoops to guide air indoors. In the heat-blasted plains of Rajasthan, similar shafts appear above Havelis, the grand mansions of desert merchants. Even the British, during their colonial years, took notes, designing bungalows with high vents and shaded verandas inspired by local innovations. Joke number 2. And you thought the only cool import from Persia was kebab. You stroll past a carpenter shaping latticework for a new home. He tells you, half joking, half proud, that wind towers are smarter than any gadget. They don't break, he says with a wink, and they don't charge rent. He's not wrong. These structures are passive. That's the key word here. Passive cooling. No motors, no bills, no buttons, just architecture that thinks ahead. And yet, for all their brilliance, wind towers began to vanish by the early 20th century. Industrialization brought fans, then air conditioners, then entire HVAC ecosystems. Cities grew vertically, roofs shrank, openings became liabilities instead of assets, and with them, the towers disappeared from most skylines. Still, a few stubborn ones remain, sentinels of sensible living. And now, as climate anxiety makes people look backward for forward solutions, the wind tower is having a quiet comeback. Architects sketch them again. Eco-villages include them in blueprints. Modern hotels fake them with steel and glass, hoping to borrow their serenity. You rest your hands on sun-warmed clay and close your eyes. Somewhere far away, a modern skyscraper wheezes as its AC unit sputters. But here, the only sound is wind through lattice and the soft chirp of a dove roosting in the rafters, a dove with excellent taste in real estate. By now, you've wandered through wind towers of every shape and shade, but something's still tickling the back of your sleep-heavy brain. Why did some towers work better than others? Surely not all breezes are created equal. You're right to wonder. And as the sun begins to slip toward late afternoon, you follow the curve of a narrow lane toward the edge of the old quarter, toward a house built with a slightly different ambition: performance. This one wasn't just trying to catch wind, it wanted to command it. Let's start with a small confession. You know how sometimes people buy fancy blenders and pretend it's because of nutrition, but really it's just because the buttons light up? Ancient Persian architects had a bit of that flair too. They didn't just build for function, they designed for elegance. And in the realm of wind towers, the difference between average and sublime was all in the placement, proportion, and oh yes, a little something called thermal siphoning. Let's get nerdy for a second, but gently, like we're tiptoeing around a sleeping cat. Wind towers worked in multiple ways. The most basic idea was this: capture a breeze, funnel it downward, and let it circulate through the rooms like a wandering ghost with impeccable manners. But what if there wasn't a breeze? This is where thermal siphoning, sometimes called the chimney effect, came into play. You've felt it before, the way heat rises through a building, making your attic feel like a toaster on broil. Wind towers could reverse this phenomenon. If designed with multiple shafts, some open to the wind, others facing away, they could create internal air pressure differences that gently pulled warm air out of the house while drawing cooler air in from underground basements or shaded courtyards. The result? Movement, even without wind. Passive air circulation driven by nothing more than temperature gradients and geometry. Historians still argue whether this was discovered intentionally or just stumbled upon by observant bricklayers over time. Either way, the cleverness remains. You pass under an archway and find yourself in a garden, a bag in Persian terms, laid out in geometric symmetry. These gardens weren't just for show. They were microclimates. Shallow pools, shade trees, and tiled walkways worked together with the wind towers to amplify cooling. The moment you step into the shade of a cypress tree, you feel it: a 3-degree drop and a sudden craving for pomegranate juice. Joke number 1. If you were a 5th century Persian noble, this was your version of central air, with a side of figs. This home's wind tower, its crown jewel, is different again. This one's octagonal. 8 faces, 8 potential wind catchers. No matter which way the breeze comes, this bad boy's ready. And inside, vents can be opened or closed with wooden shutters to fine-tune the airflow. Think of it like setting your ancient thermostat, except without any software updates or mysteriously blinking red lights. The more you look, the more you realize how every detail of the house participates in the dance of air. Ceilings are high to let heat rise. Walls are thick, often over 2 feet, to trap coolness during the day and release it at night. Floors are sometimes covered in kesht, a sun-dried brick that feels cool to the touch long after sunset. Quirky detail: in some homes, ceilings had small copper plates embedded inside to conduct excess heat upward, helping draw warm air toward the tower. That's right, built-in heat transfer systems. And you thought your thermostat was clever. Some towers even included simple filtration tricks: wet cloth stretched over openings to catch dust and add moisture to the incoming air. Occasionally, people would scent these cloths with herbs or flowers: basil, rosewater, even saffron if you were feeling extravagant. Imagine drifting off to sleep with a breeze that smelled faintly of your grandmother's spice cabinet. At this point, your journey takes you below ground again, into a basement chamber with unusually tall ceilings and an echo like the inside of a cello. This is a sardab, literally a cold room, and it serves as the final stop on the wind's long journey. Here, the air feels like an exhale after a long sigh. The tower above gently draws in movement, but the basement amplifies its effect. Cool air pools low, warm air is swept away. You sit on a worn bench and feel the ancient math working around you, even if you don't see it. Historians still debate how widespread these advanced versions were. Some argue they were limited to elite homes. Others think ordinary people had scaled-down versions, simpler towers, shallower basements, but the same underlying principles. In a way, the mystery mirrors our modern world. Some people splurge on full smart home ecosystems. Others just open a window and let the breeze figure it out. You run your hand along the clay wall. It's not smooth exactly, but neither is it rough, more like the surface of a loaf of bread left out overnight. Every brick seems to hum with absorbed sun. Joke number 2. Not to be dramatic, but if adobe walls could hug you, they would. You return upstairs just in time to see the sunset washing everything in the same ochre and amber tones as the towers themselves. The geometry of it all, the tower catching light, the courtyard holding shade, the floor cooling your soles, feels less like a building and more like a quiet agreement between elements. Back outside, a breeze picks up. Not much, just a polite gust, as if the desert itself is clearing its throat. The wind tower catches it instantly, and somewhere inside the house, a door creaks open just slightly from the change in pressure. It's here, standing in the dying warmth of the day, that you realize these towers weren't just architectural features. They were strategies, entire philosophies built into mud and brick. An understanding that comfort doesn't have to be bought or powered, sometimes it just needs to be channeled. And as you watch the last sunlight vanish behind the rooftops, one more thought arrives like a feather on the breeze. Someone figured all this out 2,500 years ago, probably barefoot. Your feet carry you onward through the winding alleys of Yazd, past homes that blur into sand and sky, their wind towers still rising like watchful guardians. The evening has mellowed to that honey-colored twilight that makes every surface glow, and you find yourself nearing the edges of the city, where homes once stood closer to the desert itself, and where a different kind of wind had to be managed. See, not all wind is a blessing. Sure, we've been fawning over the towers that graciously scoop up the soft, cooling drafts, but the desert also has another kind of wind, the rude kind. Hot, dry, unrelenting gusts that kick up dust, rattle shutters, and test your patience like a sibling chewing too loudly. Joke number 1. Imagine living in a place where the wind isn't just annoying, it's personally offended by your comfort. Here, architects had to get clever. They couldn't just invite every breeze into the house like it was welcome, so they built towers that could discriminate. Yes, even wind towers had standards. Enter the directional wind catcher, the diva of the architectural world. These towers weren't simple vertical chimneys. No, they had multiple compartments, some open, some closed, some facing prevailing winds, others sealed off to block hot or sandy gusts. Their interior channels could be rotated or adjusted using dampers and louvers, wooden panels you could swing open or shut based on the weather, or sometimes just the mood of your grandmother. Historians still argue whether these adjustments were routine daily chores or something more ceremonial, maybe part of a morning routine as revered as making tea. Either way, someone in the household likely had the job of windmaster, tweaking the airflow like an ancient DJ spinning a set of cool drafts and quiet nights. But here's where it gets even cooler, literally. Some towers were designed not just to pull air from above, but from below. That's right. Reverse psychology for the atmosphere. They worked in tandem with the qanats, those ancient underground water tunnels we visited earlier. Air passed over these channels, cooled by the subterranean water, and was then drawn up into the living spaces. No fans, no ice, just a cooperative system of earth, water, and sky. This wasn't just architecture, it was orchestration. You duck into another home, abandoned now, its roof long since caved, its plaster flaking like old paint on forgotten furniture. Still, the bones of the wind tower stand. You can see the separate vents, the switchable shutters. It's a reminder. Even decay can't hide ingenuity. There's a patch of graffiti on the inner wall, probably no older than a few decades. A name, a date, and next to it, a drawing of the wind tower itself. Someone once lived here, drew that tower by hand. Maybe proud or maybe just bored on a summer night. Either way, they felt it mattered. Now here's a quirky fact that might just tickle your sleepy brain. Some wind towers were used as acoustic amplifiers. Yes, sound towers. Their height and shape allowed them to catch not only the wind, but the distant murmurs of the neighborhood. Think of them like ancient intercoms. A person on the roof could speak, and someone below could hear, albeit faintly, through the echoing shaft. It wasn't exactly crystal clear Zoom audio, but hey, it beat shouting through 10 feet of mud brick. You glance upward again, and for a moment the tower seems to whisper something. It's not words, exactly. More like a hush or a sigh, centuries of voices passing through air, vibrating against sun-baked clay. Joke number 2. Fun fact, these towers were quieter than most group chats. Back in the more populated streets, you start to notice how the towers subtly differ house to house. Some are painted white to reflect the sun. Others bear faint blue patterns, geometric designs that hint at their owner's tastes or perhaps status. Some rise tall and narrow like proud necks. Others squat low, almost shy. But each one was built to listen to the wind, not command it. There's a gentleness to the concept that feels oddly comforting. Here's something even more unexpected. Wind towers weren't just Persian. Variations of the concept appear in ancient Egypt and Pakistan, even as far as North Africa. But nowhere were they refined to such poetic efficiency as they were here, among the dusty courtyards of Yazd. Historians still debate the precise origin. Was it a shared invention across trade routes, or did each culture simply arrive at the same solution through trial, error, and sunburn? You pause beside a smaller home, barely taller than you, but with a delicate little wind catcher no bigger than a birdhouse. It's not functional anymore, but its presence says enough. Even the most modest homes were invited into this pact with the breeze. Coolness here wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. And everyone, rich, poor, pomegranate vendor, melon farmer, deserved at least a whisper of relief from the heat. Inside you find a room no larger than a studio apartment. The air is stale, sure, but you can picture it. A child asleep under mosquito netting, the cloth gently billowing from the slow pull of a high, narrow shaft. Outside, goats shift and bleat. A kettle boils over coals. And above it all, the tower listens for wind. Quirky aside, Persian lullabies often mentioned wind, not just metaphorically, but as characters. The breeze was a caretaker, a messenger, sometimes a trickster, but always present. That's the kind of cultural embedding that happens only when something is deeply felt. You step outside once more, the evening air now comfortably cool, and tilt your head back. A few stars peek through, the first hint of night. There's one last home to visit before the light fully fades. A scholar's house, they say. No great title, no royal blood, but a man who wrote treatises on airflow and sketched tower designs in the margins of his poetry. His home, you'll see it soon. For now, just follow the breeze. You follow the breeze, well, metaphorically. The actual breeze is hard to track. It keeps disappearing behind sun-warmed walls and popping up from alley corners like it's playing hide-and-seek. But the path is clear enough. You walk through a more scholarly quarter now, past homes that once housed thinkers, artisans, calligraphers, the kinds of people who probably wore ink-stained sleeves and argued about the curve of a single letter for hours. The home you're approaching now belonged to one such man, though his name has mostly evaporated from the historical record. There's a small stone near the entrance with a barely legible inscription, something about air, knowledge, and the rhythm of the seasons. You like him already. Step inside. The house isn't grand. Modest, really. A central courtyard with a dry fountain, empty planters, and birds chirping somewhere overhead like they're reciting forgotten footnotes. But above it all, looming gently, quietly dignified, is the wind tower. And this one's different. This is a split-shaft wind tower, a design that scholars still puzzle over. See, rather than a single vertical shaft, this tower is divided, often into 2, 3, or even 4 compartments. Some compartments bring air in, some push air out. The whole setup works like a lung, inhale, exhale, a breathing building. Joke number 1, modern houses barely open a window, and here we are with homes that breathe. Your smart thermostat could never. Inside, you find the tower's inner chamber. Unlike the simple towers from earlier, this one has wooden fins, maybe once adjustable, and faded diagrams on the wall. He had scrawled airflow patterns in charcoal, arrows, notes, the word quiet repeated in different sizes, perhaps as a design goal or just a personal mantra. Historians still debate whether this tower was a prototype or a refinement. Some claim it influenced a whole generation of builders in the region. Others say it was just a local oddity, one man's obsession with breezes turned into architecture. But one thing's for sure, he took his air seriously. You sit on a wide stone ledge near the base of the tower. There's a soft sigh overhead. The tower still works, at least a little. And it's here that you find something even more curious. A notebook, stored in a recessed shelf built into the wall. Of course, the pages are mostly gone, eaten by time. But one fragment remains. It describes a ritual. At the start of summer, he would climb the tower, whisper a poem into the wind, and then close off all but the northern vent. Not for science, for mood. He claimed that certain directions carried calmer dreams. You can't help but smile. Science and poetry rolled into Adobe. There's another little gem hidden here. A hand mirror, bronze, cracked but reflective. It's not just for vanity. The scholar used it to track sunlight angles within the tower. When the mirror lit up a particular notch on the floor, it meant it was time to adjust the dampers. Kind of like a solar alarm clock, but make it Persian. Joke number 2. This guy turned a wind tower into a Fitbit for his house, but like 1,000 years early. You lean against the wall and trace the grooves where tools once carved airflow channels. There's a kind of intimacy to it, knowing someone touched this space not to decorate, but to listen, to measure, to coax the elements into cooperation, and the tower rewards that attention. Even now, as dusk deepens and the surrounding air cools, a soft stream pushes down the shaft. It's barely more than a whisper against your skin, but enough to remind you this system works. No wires, no motors, just geometry, gravity, and patience. Oh, and one last quirky surprise. Some scholars now believe these towers were also musical. Stay with me. In certain wind conditions, particularly with tall, narrow towers and carved channels, the air could create a low, resonant hum, a kind of natural ambient music. Not loud, more like the gentle note of a seashell pressed to your ear. Some locals called them singing towers. And yes, historians still argue whether that was an intentional feature or just a happy accident of physics. You tilt your head. Could that be? No, probably just a cricket or your stomach. But still, you wonder. You wander back into the courtyard, the shadows now long and soft. The fountain basin catches some of the fading sky. Everything here, every tile, every timber, every grain of it seems to be holding its breath, as if waiting for one more breeze, one more summer. And here's a quiet reality check. These wind towers, many of them are disappearing, replaced by air conditioners, sealed windows, and noise. Comfort, yes, but a comfort that hums instead of sighs. Progress is a strange trade, but for now you've seen it. The ingenuity, the care, the humble genius of Persian homes that breathed, whispered, and maybe even sang. Joke number 3. Bet your apartment can't hum a lullaby and lower your energy bill at the same time. As you leave the house, you don't close the door behind you. Just a courtesy to the wind, in case it feels like slipping in. The breeze nudges your cheek again, cooler now. You follow it down another alley, where moonlight starts to spill between the rooftops. The wind towers above you stand like quiet companions, watching, listening, breathing. You keep walking, because the city still has stories left in its stones, and night is only just beginning. Your sandals crunch gently on the gravel path as you step out of the scholar's home and follow the breeze once more. The wind, ever the polite tour guide, leads you onward, this time toward the outskirts of the ancient city, where the buildings sit lower and the streets stretch wider, opening to the edges of the desert. You're heading toward the ice houses. Yes, that's right. In the middle of the Persian summer, when even the shade threatens to melt your eyebrows, ancient engineers managed to keep ice. Not metaphorical coolness, not clay jars with lukewarm water, but real, actual, hold-it-in-your-hand ice. And they did it with, drumroll, wind towers. Well, wind towers and a few other tricks, but we'll get there. The first thing you notice as you approach one of these structures is the dome. It's tall and steep, a kind of reverse cone made from mud brick. The walls are astonishingly thick, sometimes up to 2 meters, and every inch is designed to resist heat and trap cold. Step inside, and suddenly the dry, baking air transforms into something gentler, cooler, denser. This is a yakshal, literally ice pit. It's more than a cold storage unit, it's an architectural miracle. These things could keep ice frozen for months, even in blistering heat. And during winter, workers would channel water into shallow pools overnight, allowing it to freeze. By morning, they'd haul the ice inside, stack it deep in the cone-shaped chamber, and seal it in with layers of straw and cold air. Here's where the wind tower comes back in. Some of these yakchals were fitted with short shafts or vents that created a pressure differential, pushing hot air out and letting cool air settle in. Passive cooling. You're basically standing in an ancient walk-in freezer, minus the hum, minus the guilt, and with way more charm. Joke number 1. You've got a stainless steel fridge with smart settings. They had mud cones and no electricity, and their ice lasted longer. You run your fingers along the inner walls, smooth and cold even now. Tiny pebbles are embedded in the clay, intentional, to increase thermal mass and keep temperatures steady. Everything was optimized for insulation long before R value became a buzzword. But even more impressive, the logistics. Ice houses weren't just for wealthy estates. Communities used them for everything from preserving food to treating fever. In fact, historians still argue whether some of these were public utilities or privately owned. Records are patchy, and inscriptions, when they exist, tend to be poetic rather than practical. Priorities. One fragment, painted faintly along a stairwell, reads something like, "For the summer sun, this bowl of winter we keep." Poetic and practical, apparently. Let's not skip the fringe fact of the day. Some historians believe that, in a few elite homes, snow was imported from mountain peaks hundreds of kilometers away, packed into hides or straw, and stored in yakshals with special herbs to make early sorbet-like treats. Luxury dessert, 5th century BCE style. Would you like some pomegranate ice with your date loaf, sir? Joke number 2. Persians were basically the first ones to ask, "Do you want ice with that?" But even this doesn't exhaust the ingenuity. Outside the yakhal, you spot narrow channels carved into the hard earth again, but here used to guide runoff water away efficiently. No melting puddles, no wasted droplets. Every aspect of this system was cyclical, deliberate, and astonishingly low impact. You wander a little farther and stumble upon a collapsed yakchal, half swallowed by sand. It looks like an abandoned spaceship, domed and eerie. Climb the edge carefully and peer in. There's a hush to it, as if the coolness has gone into hiding, waiting for someone to rebuild. You can almost hear the echo of water trickling into the stone basin below. The genius of these systems wasn't just their ability to preserve ice. It was their resilience. These structures could stand for centuries with minimal maintenance, built from simple materials, designed by people who watched shadows, felt breezes, and took their time. And that, maybe more than anything, is what stays with you as you rest under the curved dome, cooling gently in the evening air. They took their time. No rushing, no noise, no updates or firmware patches, just a slow, quiet conversation with nature, wind, water, shade, and sun. Joke number 3. Modern life gives you a calendar alert when your freezer door is ajar. These folks just built theirs with no door to begin with. You lie back on the cool floor, staring up into the empty cone. The stars have started to twinkle through the open apex. A breeze whispers down the shaft. Maybe it's leftover wisdom from the builders, or maybe it's just air doing what air does. But either way, it feels like a gift. So you lie there, just breathing, listening, cool air moving over you like a silk scarf dipped in shadow. And for a moment you could believe that summer doesn't always have to mean sweat. Leaving the embrace of the yakshal's cooling dome, you step back into the quiet streets, where the hum of the city at night has softened to a gentle murmur. The wind, your trusty guide, nudges you onward once again, this time toward the world of daily life and the subtle interplay of comfort and survival that shaped Persian homes. You find yourself drawn to the modest houses of ordinary families, where the wind towers weren't just monuments to engineering, but essential tools for everyday comfort. These homes lacked the grandeur of palaces or the experimental flair of scholars' abodes, yet their wind towers speak volumes about the lives of the people who lived in them. The wind tower in one such house is short and squat, almost squatty by design, less about elegance, more about function. You lean against the cool mud wall and listen as a soft, steady breeze trickles down the shaft. The interior smells faintly of dried herbs, mint perhaps, and baked clay. A small child's toy lies forgotten on the tiled floor, its colors faded by sunlight but still hinting at laughter. You imagine the family inside, the mother carefully preparing evening tea, the father recounting tales of the day, the children chasing each other in the courtyard. The wind tower offers relief not just from heat, but from the constant wariness of desert living. Joke number 1. You know you've made it when your house has a built-in air conditioner that doesn't need Wi-Fi. One fascinating detail is the way these towers worked with the layout of the home. Rooms were arranged to catch the cool air funneled down the tower and channel it through narrow corridors, creating a natural ventilation system that cooled not only the rooms but also the stone floors and walls, which then radiated the chill after sunset. Historians still argue whether these designs were standardized or adapted on a house-by-house basis, based on the owner's wealth, local winds, or even personal preference. After all, some families preferred a draft-free courtyard for their daily naps, while others embraced the gusts for drying herbs or cooling bread dough. Speaking of bread, you can't help but notice the small oven near the kitchen, its entrance soot-stained but carefully maintained. The humble tandoor was more than a cooking device, it was a social center. Women would gather here, sharing stories and songs as the aroma of freshly baked flatbread filled the air. Joke number 2. Who needs Netflix when you have bread-baking gossip? Now for a quirky tidbit. Some wind towers had small niches or cooling pockets built into their walls, where water-saturated cloths were hung to increase humidity and lower temperatures slightly. Think of it as an ancient Persian humidifier, a nifty trick for those dry summer days when even the breeze felt like a warm sigh. You run your fingers over one such niche, still damp from the last rain. The water smell mingles with dust and stone, a reminder of the delicate balance these homes struck with their environment. And while we're talking about balance, here's a scholarly debate. Some experts believe these cooling pockets were primarily used to combat the harsh desert dryness for health reasons, while others argue they were simple comfort hacks that spread through communities by word of mouth rather than official design. Joke number 3. Turns out your grandma's humidifier trick is older than the wheel. You close your eyes and imagine yourself reclining on the tiled floor, a cool breeze brushing your skin, the distant sounds of the market fading away. The gentle whisper of the wind tower becomes a lullaby, a steady, soothing rhythm in the quiet night. It's easy to forget that these designs weren't just about practicality. They were also about creating a mood, a space where people could rest and rejuvenate in a harsh world. Somewhere between architecture and poetry. As you rise to leave, you catch sight of a faded mural near the doorway, a group of birds taking flight, wings spread wide. A reminder that even in the smallest homes, there was room for dreams and stories. You step back into the moonlit street, the wind tugging softly at your clothes, guiding you forward. The city's secrets are many, and your journey through its cooling wonders is far from over. The night deepens as you follow the wind's gentle pull toward the city's bustling market district, now quiet and empty under the stars. The scent of spices still lingers faintly in the cool air, cinnamon, saffron, cardamom, reminders of daily life that buzzed here just hours ago. But your focus isn't on commerce tonight. Instead, you're drawn to the curious ways Persian vendors and cooks used natural cooling to preserve their goods, long before refrigeration became a household dream. The first thing you notice is the clever use of shade and water, simple, ancient tactics that turned dusty alleyways into cool havens. Merchants draped woven mats above their stalls, not only to block the sun but to trap moisture and create tiny pockets of cooler air below. Nearby, a basin filled with water beads gently, its surface disturbed by a soft breeze funneled through a miniature wind tower perched on the rooftop. This tiny ventilation system isn't just for show. It cools the water and air around it, keeping delicate fruits and vegetables fresh longer. You pause to watch a vendor arranging pomegranates, their ruby seeds glistening even in the moonlight. Historians still argue whether the choice of produce was influenced more by seasonal availability or the natural cooling methods that extended their shelf life. Joke number 1. These vendors didn't need apps to tell them when to restock, just a breeze and some shade. Peeling back a curtain of woven reeds, you glimpse the bazaar's ice pits, Small but efficient spaces where ice harvested in winter was stored carefully, wrapped in straw and herbs to keep it from melting too fast. This ice wasn't just for cooling drinks. It was essential for making early versions of frozen desserts and soothing ailments. It's fascinating to realize that even in the heart of a desert city, vendors harnessed the power of wind and water to create comfort and preserve life. You follow a narrow alley lined with fountains and pools, the sound of trickling water mixing with the distant hum of the night. These weren't just decorative, they were part of a microclimate system that cooled the air and provided moisture to plants and animals. Joke number 2. Who knew that ancient Persians were the original creators of outdoor air conditioning? At one corner, a small group gathers around a vendor selling fresh dates and yogurt, chilled by water dripping over porous clay jars, qanats feeding tiny water channels inside the shop, keeping everything refreshingly cool. Historians debate the origins of this practice, with some suggesting it evolved independently across different regions, while others argue it was spread through trade along the Silk Routes. You sip from a clay cup, the coolness of the water soothing your throat. The simplicity and effectiveness of these natural refrigeration methods remind you that human ingenuity often springs from necessity and observation. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some markets featured portable wind towers, wooden contraptions with slatted sides that vendors could carry and position to catch breezes and direct them over their goods, a sort of ancient wheeled air conditioner on demand. You chuckle to yourself, imagining a vendor wheeling around his cool breeze machine while shouting, "Step right up! Feel the wind, folks!" Joke number 3. Modern fans might be louder, but they sure don't have the charm of a wind tower on wheels. As the night wears on, you find a quiet bench near a softly bubbling fountain, letting the gentle splashes and cooling air wash over you. The market sleeps, but its legacy of cooling innovation lingers, a testament to the blend of practicality and poetry that defines ancient Persian life. You close your eyes, feeling the breeze whisper stories of merchants, cooks, and families who thrived in the desert, all thanks to the simple magic of wind towers and water. As the night's cool veil begins to lift and dawn edges closer, the wind shifts gently, guiding you away from the market's quiet corners toward the grander architecture of ancient Persia. You find yourself beneath towering columns and soaring arches, where marble and stone meet in a dance of shadow and light. Here, in the palaces and gardens of the elite, the use of wind towers takes on a new level of sophistication, blending engineering with artistry. These structures are taller, more elaborate, often crowned with decorative carvings and inscriptions that celebrate the mastery of nature's breath. You step inside one such palace, where the walls are painted with scenes of hunting, feasts, and mythical creatures. The air here is noticeably cooler, despite the rising sun, thanks to an intricate network of wind towers, pools, and shaded walkways designed to create a microclimate. Joke number 1. It's like the ancients invented the first open-plan air conditioning system, minus the monthly bill. The wind towers here are carefully positioned to catch prevailing winds, but also to funnel breezes over water features, long, narrow pools called hows, which cool the air through evaporation before it enters the building. The combination of water and wind is a recurring theme, almost like a duet between elements. Interestingly, some palaces had multiple wind towers connected underground by tunnels, allowing air to circulate and cool different wings throughout the complex. Historians still argue whether these tunnels were purely functional or also served as escape routes during times of unrest. As you wander the corridors, you notice the floors are made of polished stone, deliberately chosen for its thermal properties. By day, the stone absorbs heat, but by night, it slowly releases the coolness stored from shaded pools and breezes, creating a gentle temperature balance. A quirky detail catches your eye. Some wind towers were adorned with small wind-catching cups or vanes, designed to rotate and catch the slightest breeze, turning them into early wind-powered fans. Joke number 2. If only they'd figured out how to hook those to electricity, we'd have had iPhones by now. The gardens themselves are masterpieces of cooling design, featuring tall trees whose leaves rustle in the wind, creating soothing sounds and shade. Water channels crisscross the walkways, their gentle flow adding moisture to the dry air. You pause beside a fountain, watching water cascade down sculpted stone, the droplets sparkling in the morning light. It's a sensory symphony of coolness, scent, and sound. Here's an open debate. Some scholars suggest these cooling gardens were as much about displaying wealth and power as about comfort, while others argue they were genuine responses to climate and survival. Joke number 3. Either way, they beat staring at a blank wall. As you sit quietly, the cool breeze whispers through the columns, carrying faint echoes of poetry recited long ago in these very halls. You imagine the rulers and their guests, reclining on cushioned divans, sipping sherbet cooled by water trickling through underground channels. The wind tower is no longer just a functional structure, but a symbol of harmony between humans and nature, between art and science. As the sun rises higher, warming the city, you feel the lasting impression of these ancient coolers, a testament to a people who understood that comfort is not just temperature, but an experience, calm, measured, and deeply connected to the world around them. You rise and step back into the light, the wind still playing through the towers, carrying you onward. With the morning light spilling over the horizon, you follow the breeze beyond the city walls into the rugged countryside where villages cluster like pearls on a string. Here, the use of wind towers adapts once again, reflecting the rhythms of rural life and the challenges of a different pace. You find yourself in a small village, its houses modest but resilient, built from sun-dried mud bricks and topped with flat roofs. The wind towers here are simpler, lower, but no less vital, funneling cool air into homes that cling to the edges of the desert. Joke number 1. In these parts, the wind tower is the original stay cool or die trying gadget. One standout feature is the way villagers combine wind towers with courtyards filled with fruit trees and grapevines. The shade from the leaves, combined with the cooling effect of the tower, creates a microclimate that allows both people and plants to thrive in the heat. You notice a woman tending to her garden, sprinkling water onto the soil with practiced care. Water is precious here, and every drop counts. The water system is cleverly integrated with the wind towers. Small canals channel water close to the base of the towers, increasing humidity and cooling the air that moves through. This method mirrors ancient Persian irrigation techniques, like the qanat system, which transported water underground for miles, sustaining life in arid lands. Historians still argue whether these rural adaptations were born out of necessity or cultural tradition, but either way, they speak of a deep connection to the environment. Peeking inside one home, you see a clay jar resting in a recessed shaded niche, used to store water and keep it cool through evaporation. It's a simple but effective technology, enhanced by the gentle breezes funneled through the wind tower. Joke number 2. Imagine explaining this to your smart fridge. No Wi-Fi needed, just some good old air and a little mud. You sit on the shaded veranda, listening to the low murmur of the village waking up. Children's laughter floats on the breeze, mixed with the soft clatter of pots and the occasional bleat of goats. A quirky tidbit: some villages use small animal-shaped clay whistles attached to wind towers, which would spin or whistle softly as the wind passed through. These served as both weather indicators and whimsical decorations. Historians debate whether these whistles were originally practical devices or simply playful additions that became traditional over time. Joke number 3. Who knew wind towers doubled as the first wind instruments? Take that, modern orchestras. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, savoring the mingling scents of earth, herbs, and warm stone. The breeze cools your skin, carrying with it centuries of quiet ingenuity and gentle resilience. In this rural world, the wind tower is more than a cooling device. It's a heartbeat, a companion to everyday life, quietly turning the harshness of the desert into a place to live and love. You rise as the sun climbs higher, ready to continue your journey, feeling the pulse of the wind behind you. As you continue your journey, the wind guides you toward the rich cultural crossroads of Persia's historical trade routes. Here, the influence of different peoples and climates blends, and so too does the design of wind towers evolve in fascinating ways. You arrive at a bustling caravanserai, a roadside inn where weary travelers, merchants, and their animals gather to rest and refresh before continuing their long journeys. These structures are sprawling, with large courtyards, stables, and rows of rooms designed for comfort and practicality. The wind towers here are numerous and varied, rising like sentinels around the complex, each capturing the breeze from different directions. Their placement is strategic. They cool guest rooms, common areas, and even animal stables. Joke number 1. Because even camels deserve a cool breeze after a 100-mile trot. Inside the main hall, you notice a large basin filled with water and floating flowers, a calming centerpiece designed to cool the air and soothe tired travelers. The combination of water, stone, and wind creates a refreshing oasis in the heart of the desert. One clever feature of these caravanserai wind towers is their adjustable vents, slats that could be opened or closed to control the airflow, a simple but effective way to adapt to changing weather conditions. Historians still argue whether these features were standardized across caravanserai or customized depending on the region and clientele, but the consensus is that adaptability was key. Nearby, a group of merchants shares stories over steaming cups of tea, cooled naturally by wind towers funneling fresh air through the gathering space. You overhear talk of exotic goods, silk from the east, spices from the south, and realize that these wind towers were silent partners in the vast network of trade, keeping goods and people comfortable over long journeys. Joke number 2. Who knew cooling technology was a key player on the Silk Road? A quirky tidbit catches your attention. Some caravanserai featured ornate wind towers decorated with colorful tiles and inscriptions, turning these practical structures into artistic landmarks that showcase the wealth and culture of their patrons. The decorations often included calligraphy and geometric patterns that seemed to dance with the changing light and breeze. Historians debate whether these designs served purely aesthetic purposes or if they had symbolic meanings intended to bless travelers with safety and prosperity. Joke number 3. Either way, they sure beat plain old air conditioning units. You step out into the courtyard, the early sun warming your skin, but the breeze remains cool and steady, a reminder of the enduring ingenuity behind these ancient air conditioners. As you rest on a stone bench, you imagine the endless procession of travelers and merchants who found respite here, comforted by the whispering wind towers and the cool promise of shade and water. The wind seems to carry their stories, soft and steady, guiding you onward into the heart of Persia's past. Unwind now steers you toward the coastal regions of ancient Persia, where land meets sea and salty breezes mingle with desert air. Here, the design of wind towers adapts once more, integrating maritime influences and the challenge of humid, salty climates. You approach a fishing village perched on the edge of the Persian Gulf. The houses are built low and close together, with flat roofs and narrow streets designed to maximize shade and funnel sea breezes through the settlement. The wind towers here are shorter but wider, their vents oriented to catch the strong coastal winds and direct them into homes and communal spaces. The salty air carries the scent of fish and seaweed, a reminder of the village's lifeblood. Joke number 1. If you think sea air smells fresh now, imagine it mixed with the day's catch. One clever adaptation is the use of salt-resistant materials for the wind towers, plaster mixed with local gypsum and lime, to withstand the corrosive effects of salty winds. Inside the homes, the breeze is cooler and carries a slight humidity, but the combination of water jars, fountains, and shaded courtyards balances the air to keep it comfortable. You notice that some wind towers have mesh screens made from palm fibers, filtering the air and keeping out dust and insects without blocking the breeze. Historians still argue how much of this technology was influenced by maritime trade, particularly contacts with Indian Ocean cultures, but it's clear that the exchange of ideas traveled as far as the goods themselves. Joke number 2. Turns out the wind tower was the original open window policy. A quirky detail: fishermen used small wind-powered devices, like tiny rotating sails, placed atop wind towers to signal weather changes or wind shifts, early weather vanes with practical importance. Historians debate whether these were primarily practical tools or evolved into local traditions and superstitions over time. Joke number 3. Either way, they gave a whole new meaning to going with the wind. As you walk along the water's edge, the sound of waves mingles with the steady hum of the wind passing through the towers, creating a peaceful, rhythmic backdrop. The village feels alive with quiet resilience, a community shaped by the sea and the wind, its architecture a testament to adapting ancient wisdom to new environments. You sit on a sun-warmed rock, the breeze brushing your skin, and reflect on the incredible versatility of the wind tower, how this simple invention stretched from deserts to coasts, carrying comfort wherever it touched. The sea calls softly, the wind promises refreshment, and the story of cooling continues to unfold. Your journey now takes you to the twilight of ancient Persia's wind tower legacy, where tradition meets the early stirrings of modernity. The age of empires fades, and with it the slow, rhythmic breaths of ancient cooling give way to new technologies and ideas. You find yourself in a bustling 19th century Persian town, streets alive with the sounds of merchants and artisans, horse-drawn carts rattling over cobblestones. Wind towers still rise above the roofs, but now they coexist with European-style chimneys and early mechanical fans brought by travelers from distant lands. Joke number 1. It's like air conditioning was getting a younger, flashier cousin. The towers here reflect a blending of cultures, Persian craftsmanship meeting influences from British and Russian technology. Some wind towers incorporate metal grills, hinting at the industrial age's creeping presence. Inside homes, families gather around samovars, sharing stories and tea, while the wind towers continue their quiet work, drawing cool air into rooms decorated with carpets and silks. A fascinating feature of this period is the adaptation of wind towers to urban density. Narrower streets and taller buildings meant towers had to be cleverly angled and sometimes paired with ventilation shafts to maximize airflow. Historians still argue whether this adaptation prolonged the use of wind towers or hastened their decline by exposing their limits in a changing world. Joke number 2. It's like trying to keep a fan going in a crowded subway during rush hour. You notice a local inventor tinkering with a hand-cranked device designed to augment airflow inside homes, an early hybrid of human effort and nature's breeze. This blend of tradition and innovation is a hallmark of this transitional era, where ancient wisdom met modern challenges head-on. A quirky tidbit: some families place small, scented pouches in their wind towers, filled with rose petals, saffron, or dried herbs, to perfume the incoming air, turning cooling into a fragrant ritual. Historians debate how widespread this practice was, but it adds a sensory layer to the legacy of the wind tower. Joke number 3. Because nothing says cool like your air smelling like grandma's closet. As the sun sets, casting long shadows over the town, you reflect on how the wind tower story mirrors the broader human story, a slow evolution shaped by environment, culture, and necessity. The towers stand as monuments not only to engineering, but to a way of life that treasured comfort, beauty, and connection to nature. You take a deep breath of the cooling evening air, feeling the timeless whisper of the wind and the enduring spirit of those who built these silent giants. With the last light fading, you step back into the present, carrying the gentle legacy of ancient Persian wind towers with you.